on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, joined by my co-host Kevin Hinks. But let's bring in our next guest for our Cash Tag segment. That's going to be Landon Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Landon. I think we might have volume on Landon. There we go. Landon, you know, Tesla, big earnings event after the close. The stock's just off of 52-week lows last week. It seems like this is one of those quarters, Landon, that I don't see the euphoria that we typically see going into an earnings result from Tesla. And with gas prices, the way that they've been over the last quarter or so, or this year in general, it seems like demand would be there. We've had some disruptions in China as far as the lockdowns goes, you know, some disruptions in Europe and their new gigafactory in Berlin. But it seems really downbeat going into this quarterly report.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think that the investment in LikeFolio, that whole play is kind of matured a little bit, right? Years ago, it was this new upstart, and if you were going to consider an EV, you were going to get a Tesla. Now I think it's been around a little while longer. People are getting more used to it. It's not the novelty it once was, and it's got a lot of very solid competition. Now, of course, it's still the leader by far. They make amazing products. But they do have a lot of competition. So despite all the tailwinds that we talked about, gas prices primarily, and the cost of EVs coming down, I do think that it's just a different story now than it was. And so this is more of a, you know, kind of a car company now rather than an upstart moonshot, because it's able to produce, you know, it's able to produce and deliver. So before, when it's, you know, it's kind of in the entrepreneurial world, there's this mark to reality and mark to fantasy. When you're in mark to fantasy, you're just like saying, well, we can do this one day we'll do that. Then Tesla's, sure, any price makes sense. But once you actually start delivering, you have customers, then it gets down to real numbers, and usually those valuations drop and the excitement drops. But it is actually starting to produce revenue, whereas before it wasn't. So one thing that I am a little bit bullish on, this chart shows, you know, they had a little bit of a, I guess, a concern a couple of weeks ago where they lowered guidance on deliveries. But since then, in the 2 weeks since that report, delivery mentions are actually up significantly. So there is a potential for them kind of sandbagging going into this and saying, yeah, deliveries are down, and then in the report saying, actually, now they're ticking back up a little bit. There's a potential for that based on our data. But other than that, you know, when we look at Tesla across the board, their purchase intent it's doing okay. You know, it had a really good run a few months ago. It's back down to about flat on the year. It still has an uptrend, but it's in the very low part of that, right? It's on the higher lows right now. And if that moves down, then all of a sudden the uptrend is broken. So we're a little concerned moving forward with Tesla, just a little bit, not to mention all the competition. So they've got a ton of great competition. The other caveat that I'd throw out there is that the Model 3 lately has been about 95% of their deliveries, and it is losing interest on a year-over-year basis. The Model X and the Model Y are significantly gaining interest, but the big one that they have been pushing and delivering on, the Model 3, has actually been losing a little bit of consumer demand, according to our reports. So overall, a little bit cautious moving into this earnings report with Tesla.
Landon, what's the most important thing going forward for this company? Is it, you know, is it trucks? Is it SUVs and trucks? Those are coming up on the horizon that we see. Is it something that a lot of people probably don't even think about, and that's service? The money they can make off service adds to revenue. I know I have friends in the car business. They make a lot of money off service. Is it just as simply as something like China? They need China to get better, and they'll get better. Yeah, Austin and Berlin are important, but this company, at the end of the day, will be graded or will be successful or not based on China. But what do you guys see? Is it trucks? Is it China? Is it service? What do you guys see as anything that we have to watch, keep our eye on going forward?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I have to say it's a little bit of all the above. I think you laid that out really well. But they've got to continue to create enthusiasm for their products, and then they've got to create happy customers. so that they're telling their friends, they're telling their family, hey, I love my Tesla, and you should consider it over all of these competitors. And I think that's really the key, is they've got to continue to beat the competition, because, I mean, they have some really, really serious competition coming after them, not just, the startups like Rivian, Lucid, and the others, but, you've got others like Ford getting in the game, and, things like that with the F-150. I mean, I'm a fan of the concept of the Cybertruck. I don't know how much mass appeal it's going to have based on the look, and I think that they're going to risk getting beat out by people who are producing a little bit more traditional looking trucks. So I think the trucks angle is a concern for Tesla, but overall they've just got to keep cranking on the consumer demand and consumer happiness. They have to create drive for people to want to buy these vehicles, and then they've got to deliver and keep customers very, very happy. So that's what's propelled them so far this way, but they've got to keep it going in the face of all of the strong competition.
Yeah, and you mentioned competition. Mercedes just announced their new SUV that's going to compete with the Model Y. That looks amazing. BMW just announced $1.7 billion investment to build EVs here in the United States. They're always a popular car moving forward. I've got my eye on the Spectre, Landon. Have you heard of this car that just came out or was announced yesterday?
Tell me about it.
Yeah, the Rolls-Royce. It's only $410,000. The Spectre,
what's the monthly payment on that?
if you're asking that question,
yeah,
you can't afford it, is what I always say. But Landon, when you look at the gas prices, crude oil's back down to about $83 a barrel. It seems like that's based on a lot of the demand. For some reason, the administration is still taking crude oil out of the SPR I just boggles my mind why they're doing that at this point. But then you have that OPEC Plus. How important is the price of gas coming down that's going to kind of beat against the EVs? And is the popularity of EVs still there based on the fact that maybe crude oil prices and gas prices are coming down pretty swiftly?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, you've got, yes, you do got gas concerns driving EV, but even when gas, under the previous administration was $2, EVs were still rocking. I mean, they are a great car, whether or not you're feeling pain at the pump. The performance, the looks, all the features, they're fantastic vehicles, especially Teslas. And I don't think that you have to have high gas prices in order to have high demand for electric vehicles. So it's a bonus for electric vehicles, but I don't think it's a huge concern. And I'll tell you, Tom, you know exactly why they're depleting the strategic reserve, and that'll stop on November 9th. So yeah, as soon as that's over, gas prices can come back up and demand will flow back into EVs.
Landon, one last thing, infrastructure, right? Charging stations, things like that. How much is that either helping or, I believe, holding back interest in electric cars?
Yeah, because you're exactly right, because you get some of these stories where there's really long lines. I think it was in California to charge up your vehicle, and then all of a sudden you start thinking, wait a minute, like, am I setting myself up for a potential problem here? I mean, you'd have to rewind history pretty far back to have a time when you had long lines at gas stations. And so it's always been available in people's minds. You can always get gas, you're good to go. And if you have an EV at your home, sure, that's great. You can charge it every night. But on those situations where maybe there's blackouts or brownouts or you're taking a road trip, it is a concern. So I think that's just a pain point that they've got to continue to overcome to make people be able to take that leap, because it is a big behavior change to just drive, and whenever you see the light come on, you just pull into a gas station versus actually having to think ahead and plan for that battery life.
Right.
Yeah, and Landon, going into earnings, it seems like you're seeing a little bit of an uptick based on some of your data points here over the last couple of weeks here, and now it seems like the stock price is kind of intersecting with those consumer purchase mentions on Tesla. What type of score do you guys have going into this report?
Sure. So we're negative 15 right now, which is basically neutral, maybe leaning a little bit bearish. Just concerned with the purchase intent levels a little bit lower than we'd like to see. Again, it's on the sort of the down end of that uptrend, where if it continues lower, you no longer have an uptrend. We do like the potential for a surprise or a reversal on the low deliveries. We think there's a potential there in the report based on our data. But overall, taking everything into account, neutral, slightly leaning bearish.
Yeah, it's not surprising. I think this is going to be quite a messy quarter across the board for this company. You can't forget supply chain issues are still out there for a lot of the new vehicles, trying to get the chips and the other things that they need to get them off the line. All right, great stuff as always, Landon. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
All right, that's Landon Swan, co-founder of LikeFolio, breaking down the data for us on Tesla.